What's up, Casey? Dan from All Systems Golf. Super stoked to start working with you on your game. Uh, it's funny that you mentioned the journey that you've been on. I've actually gone through that similarly in my own career, so I can definitely relate to seeing some great coaches and nothing against them, but there is definitely levels of coaches these days, and it's important to understand the sort of what I would say new school cause and effect. Um, and we've been able to measure that change both with the amount of students that we've taught, but also the level of players that we've been around and also the coaches. So I think we can definitely help you out. You've got pretty good action, but I want to kind of explain to you why you haven't been able to take your game to the next level, and then we'll kind of go from there. So on the left-hand side, you have your down the line view, and I think at setup, if you look, your hands are a little low, and that puts the toe of the club up. So my guess would be that you have pretty upright golf clubs. That's just a guess. But what you do from setup to impact really kind of dictates why you would have upright golf clubs. And I'll kind of explain that as we go along, and kind of what I want you to change in your setup. But let's just go through this real quick. So as you start to take the club back, really standard, good move going back. I love that there's no forearm roll or club face rotation. I think that's really good. And as you start to get set into what we would call position 3, you have the butt end of the shaft pointing between the golf ball and your toes. So I think things look pretty standard there. And then what happens is as this club gets all the way to the top and you start to make your transition, that's where you're going to get into a little bit of trouble. So what happens to your hips is they're very level, in the sense that, you know, your left hip is level with your right hip when you turn. And we'll look at this on the face-on view and we'll see a little bit more of that. But I really think that that's where you're getting some problems as you're going to start to see this downswing. If you look at the top, the last thing I want to point out is that you have a face that's fairly open. And as we've kind of experienced different types of players, both good and higher handicappers, we're firm believers that if the club face is open, you're generally going to react by swinging or getting your swing direction more to the left. And that's what you're going to see here early in transition. You're going to see that the club is very steep. Now, obviously, with an iron, that's not the end of the world. But because this club is coming in steep, and you're trying to square up this club face the entire way, you're going to actually stall your body pivot. Your arms are going to want to straighten because your body knows you have an open club face, and that's where you get this bunched look at impact or towards impact, where you come off of the line, you have early extension, and if you notice where I drew this circle from address to where it is now, you can see that your hands are significantly higher. We can't quite get you all the way to impact from the camera, but you can definitely see that your hands have moved out this direction, and that you have the shaft steepening as you approach impact. So the high handle right there is going to cause some contact issues, but mostly what you'll see is the face, which would be left open. So if you see high right shots as your miss, that's typically what I would see. And then from there, not wanting to miss right, you would slow down your body even more and then you would really kind of flip through at impact in order to get the ball to avoid that right miss. So that's going to be the majority of our work. And so everybody's going to look at this downswing position and say, okay, we need to do some work here. But the reality is, because everything is going to be your root cause due to this open club face, so if you don't fix this club face first, it's really difficult to say that you can fix this, because your body's doing everything it can in transition in order to square up the face. And that's what we do as players, is we react to the club face. So real quick, let's look on your side view. So on your side view, you'll get a better picture of this. You're going to notice it's set up. You're very centered over the golf ball, which is a matchup more for a fader of the ball. So that just is what it is. And then as you start to take it back, I really like this position here. You've loaded into your right leg, specifically towards the right heel. But then you're going to get into a little bit of trouble, and you start to get weight shifting a little bit early onto your left side before you complete your backswing. I don't necessarily mind that, but given that your hips are very level, that's also going to kind of spiral into a little bit of a steeper shaft on the downswing. But again, that's all going to relate to the club face. So in short, I think when you look at your backswing, you're just responding to an open club face. So and we're going to have a great model for you, because if we take a look at Jordan Spieth here, he is very similar, it looks like, in build to you, and probably one of my favorite golf swings. But if we look at Jordan, you're going to see that the shaft is a little bit more vertical at setup. So even if you have long arms, you can still have that shaft sitting a little more vertical, where the butt end of the shaft goes through the navel. And then what you're going to see from him, slightly different move on the takeaway, because he has a little bit of a different grip. It was a lot weaker. But you're going to see how he has the face a little bit open, but not quite as much as you. And this is a short iron. It gets better with his longer clubs. But look at the flex or the bow in this lead wrist. So because of that, we know that if he maintains that, the club face is going to be in a pretty damn good position. So as he starts to transition, he's going to stay in his posture. The club's going to shallow out right here. And then if we look here, not the best frame in the world, but he's got the club very neutral. And so from here, you can just rotate left as hard as you want with your chest. Okay, so this is all fine and dandy as far as our model goes. And then I want you to notice his impact and how his handle is kind of returned to the same spot it was at address. Okay, so that's sort of your full breakdown of what's going on. And now let's kind of explain what I'd like you to do in order to get this sort of more organized out. So you're going to have 2 drills. And our first drill is that we need to get your backswing a little bit more in line. So that's really where our big focus is going to be. And what I'd like you to do is work on some pivot. So you can see how I put a club across my hips right here. And all I'm doing is trying to keep this level with my hips, and I'm pointing it as much as I can to where the golf ball would be, or slightly inside. And what you'll feel is that you really straighten this right leg, and that's what gets the hips to steepen, is that straightening of the right leg. So I want you to really work on that and getting weight into this right heel. So we need to do a lot of drills where we're just practicing this pivot, where we feel like the hips are steep and we're getting a lot of weight into our right heel. Okay, so really get the feel of that. And then what you can do is say, okay, well, what does that feel like? And you can do some mirror drills where you're really focused. And I think your main feel is going to be that this right leg straightens and weight gets into your right heel. Okay. From there, and trust me, we're going to want to do a lot of this drill, so you'll see it in your practice plan. From there, we need to do what I call a P6 drill, which is you get a shaft or an alignment stick. If this is 12 o'clock at the target, we want this at like probably 9 or 10 o'clock. I have it a little more at 8. And then watch what I do here. So what I'm doing now is I'm setting up at address, and I have an alignment stick or another shaft. You could do this anyway. And in my lead hand, I have my club. And you can see I'm practicing the backswing move. So this is a progression. You'd work on the backswing first. Okay. And then on the downswing, what we're trying to do is we're going to try to match up this shaft that's across our shoulders. We're going to try to match that up as quickly as we can with the shaft that's outside of our foot line at 10 o'clock. And what this does is you can see how this really opens me up and gets the chest rotating. Okay, so this is that feel that I want you to have. And what's going to happen is that shaft's going to shallow out because of these steeper hips, and that will actually flex or bow your lead wrist in transition. And then from there, you'll be able to open, 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 open. And if you notice, just while I'm doing this little drill, watch how I avoid any early extension without having to manipulate. So I'll put one on my tush line right there. Okay. And then you're going to see me go up to the top. I'm not quite in my right heel, so don't judge me too hard. But notice as I make my transition, all I have to do is turn. Because of those steep hips, I get to stay in that posture. I don't need to come out. And because the shaft is shallowing, now I can rotate, 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 rotate. Okay, so that's how I would organize this out for our big change. The main thing is that backswing. If we can get you to pivot properly, get that right leg to straighten as you feel like you get more weight into your right heel, and then match that up with this feeling of leaving the arms where they are, and then getting you to get your chest more rotated before you get to impact, which is what we call position 7. All right, buddy, so I'll send you some stuff so that you can have this. Basically, this is called a P6 or impact drill. And then your other one is just steep hips. So you'll see those on your practice plan, and then everything will be lined up as repetition, and we'll get it done. Be sure and send me progress videos, and I'm excited to get to work.